Hello, everyone. Ron here from L.T.L. Tutoring Central, and I am back with another story. This one by Stephen Leacock, Canadian author. Just before we jump into the story, if you don't mind hitting that subscribe button, that helps the channel a lot. Thank you very much to everyone who has subscribed, liked videos, shared videos. It really does help the channel. It's growing nicely, but I think we can do better. Also, don't forget that I tutor locally here at the Big Table and online around the world. So if you want to know more about my private tutoring service, just send me an email and I can send you further information, or we can have a free online information meeting. That's always fun to meet each other. I am going to share my screen here as soon as I find the right button. There we go. So that you can see the text, or you can just sit back and listen if you like. Now, don't forget there are playlists for the story time, playlist for collocations and idioms, so you can check out all of them in one place if you would like. I'm just prepping here because I have a cough that won't go away, and I might have to mute. So I've got to get this little button up here so I can reach it in case I have to block myself so I don't cough in your ear. Or at least I'll try to catch myself. Also, when I do these videos, I usually do one take. So if I make a mistake, there you go. If I make a mistake, it's probably going to be in here, and you'll see that we all make mistakes. All right. The information about Stephen Leacock is from the Canadian Encyclopedia. Stephen Butler Leacock, FRSC, that's the Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada, humorist, author, academic, born 30 December 1869 in Swanmore, England, died 28 March 1944 in Toronto, Ontario. He moved to Canada, I think, when he was very young. I've forgotten, I did know before, but he was a child, I believe. Stephen Leacock was the English-speaking world's best-known humorist between 1915 and 1925. He was awarded the Mark Twain Medal for Humor, the Royal Society of Canada's Lorne Pierce Medal, and the Governor General's Literary Award for Nonfiction. Trained as an economist, historian, and political scientist, he served as a professor in the Department of Economics and Political Science at McGill University from 1903 to 1936. The Stephen Leacock Memorial Medal for Humor was established in his honor in 1947. He was designated a National Historic Person of Canada in 1968. So lots of accomplishments, amazing guy. I am most familiar with his humorous stories, but perhaps I should read some of his nonfiction and maybe even do a video, a recording of it and put it online. We'll see. You can let me know if you've read any of his nonfiction, if there's something that you think might be interesting to do for the channel. Now, I don't think I've read this story before. I've read a lot of Stephen Leacock in the past, but the title doesn't ring a bell. I might have, but if I have, I've forgotten. So again, I may stumble here and there on words because when you first read through, especially out loud on video, it can be a bit tricky. So you'll just have to bear with me here. The human element in mathematics. The student of arithmetic who has mastered the first four rules of his art and successfully striven with money, sums, and fractions finds himself confronted by an unbroken expanse of questions known as problems. These are short stories of adventure and industry with the end omitted, and though betraying a strong family resemblance, are not without a certain element of romance. All right, so you can see right away that he's playing around with word problems, mathematical word problems. I'm assuming who has mastered the first four rules of his art, maybe addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. But at any rate, you will have probably in your past dealt with word problems in mathematics, and you might be doing so right now. Leacock is amazingly humorous in my mind, but you do have to sort of pay attention. He's got a bit of a dry wit, so we'll see how this goes. The characters in the plot of a problem are three people called A, B, and C. The form of the question is generally of this sort. A, B, and C do a certain piece of work. A can do as much work in 1 hour as B in 2 or C in 4. Find out how long they work at it. Or thus, A, B, and C are employed to dig a ditch. A can dig as much in 1 hour as B can dig in 2, and B can dig twice as fast as C. Find how long, etc., etc. Or after this wise, A lays a wager that he can walk faster than B or C. A can walk half as fast again as B, and C is only an indifferent walker. Find how far, and so forth. So very much satirizing the word problem, sometimes absolutely ridiculous word problems that they have in mathematics. My younger students, I teach math to younger students up to high school, and yeah, some word problems are the bane of their existence sometimes. And I have to admit that some of them make sense and some of them are absolutely ridiculous. And they should really connect more with the real world. The occupations of A, B, and C are many and varied. In the older arithmetics, they contented themselves with doing a certain piece of work. This statement of the case, however, was found too sly and mysterious, or possibly lacking in romantic charm. It became the fashion to define the job more clearly and to set them at walking matches, ditch digging, regattas, and piling cordwood. At times, they became commercial and entered into partnership, having with their old mystery a certain capital. Above all, they revel in motion. When they tire of walking matches, A rides on horseback or borrows a bicycle and competes with his weaker-minded associates on foot. Now they race on locomotives. Now they row, or again they become historical and engage stagecoaches, or at times they are aquatic and swim. If their occupation is actual work, they prefer to pump water into cisterns, two of which leak through holes in the bottom and one of which is watertight. A, of course, has the good one. He also takes the bicycle and the best locomotive and the right of swimming with the current. Whatever they do, they put money on it, being all three sports. A always wins. I'm not sure A is a sport. In the early chapters of the arithmetic, their identity is concealed under the names John, William, and Henry, and they wrangle over the division of marbles. In algebra, they are often called X, Y, Z, but these are only their Christian names, and they are really the same people. Now, to one who has followed the history of these men through countless pages of problems, watched them in their leisure hours dallying with cordwood, and seen their panting sides heave in the full frenzy of filling a cistern with a leak in it, they become something more than mere symbols. They appear as creatures of flesh and blood, living men with their own passions, ambitions, and aspirations like the rest of us. Let us view them in turn. A is a full-blooded, blustering fellow of energetic temperament, hot-headed and strong-willed. It is he who proposes everything, challenges B to work, makes the bets, and bends the others to his will. He is a man of great physical strength and phenomenal endurance. He has been known to walk 48 hours at a stretch and to pump 96. His life is arduous and full of peril. A mistake in the working of a sum may keep him digging a fortnight without sleep. A repeating decimal in the answer might kill him. Yikes. But it's fun seeing this sort of personification of A, B, and C. So we're now imagining them, seeing them as real people, fully fleshed out people. B is a quiet, easygoing fellow, afraid of A and bullied by him, but very gentle and brotherly to C, to little C, the weakling. He is quite in A's power, having lost all his money in bets. Poor C is an undersized, frail man with a plaintive face. Constant walking, digging, and pumping has broken his health and ruined his nervous system. His joyless life has driven him to drink and smoke more than is good for him, and his hand often shakes as he digs ditches. He has not the strength to work as the others can. In fact, as Hamlin Smith has said, A can do more work in 1 hour than C in 4. I am thinking Hamlin Smith must be mathematical books. The name sounds slightly familiar. The first time that ever I saw these men was one evening after a regatta. They'd all been rowing in it, and it had transpired that A could row as much in 1 hour as B in 2 or C in 4. B and C had come in dead fagged, and C was coughing badly. Never mind, old fellow, I heard B say. I'll fix you up on the sofa and get you some hot tea. Just then A came blustering in and shouted, I say, you fellows, Hamlin Smith has shown me 3 cisterns in his garden and he says we can pump them until tomorrow night. I bet I can beat you both. Come on, you can pump in your rowing things, you know. Your cistern leaks a little, I think. See? I heard B growl that it was a dirty shame and that C was used up now, but they went, and presently I could tell from the sound of the water that A was pumping 4 times as fast as C. For years after that, I used to see them constantly about town and always busy. I never heard of any of them eating or sleeping. Then, owing to a long absence from home, I lost sight of them. On my return, I was surprised to no longer find A, B, and C at their accustomed tasks. On inquiry, I heard that work in this line was now done by N, M, and O, and that some people were employing for algebraica jobs 4 foreigners called Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta. Now, it chanced one day that I stumbled upon old D in the little garden in front of his cottage, hoeing in the sun. D is an aged laboring man who used occasionally to be called in to help A, B, and C. Did I know 'em, sir? He answered. Why, I knowed 'em ever since they was little fellows in brackets. Master A, he were a fine lad, sir, though I always said, give me Master B for kind-heartedness like. Many's the job as we've been on together, sir, though I never did no racing nor aught of that, but just the plain labor, as you might say. I'm getting a bit too old and stiff for it nowadays, sir. Just scratch about in the garden here and grow a bit of logarithm or raise a common denominator or two. But Mr. Euclid, he used me still for them propositions, he do. From the garrulous old man, I learned the melancholy end of my former acquaintances. Soon after I left town, he told me C had been taken ill. It seems that A and B had been rowing on the river for a wager, and C had been running on the bank and then sat in a draft. Of course, the bank had refused the draft, and C was taken ill. A and B came home and found C lying helpless in bed. A shook him roughly and said, Get up, C, we're going to pile wood. C looked so worn and pitiful that B said, Look here, A, I won't stand for this. He isn't fit to pile wood tonight. C smiled feebly and said, Perhaps I might pile a little if I sat up in bed. Then B, thoroughly alarmed, said, See here, A, I'm going to fetch a doctor. He's dying. A flared up and answered, You've no money to fetch a doctor. I'll reduce him to his lowest terms, B said firmly. That'll fetch him. Okay, so the doctor's trying to get a bargain from, or B is trying to get a bargain from the doctor. Reduce him to his lowest terms. C's life might even then have been saved, but they made a mistake about the medicine. It stood at the head of the bed on a bracket, and the nurse accidentally removed it from the bracket without changing the sign. Okay, so you have to pay attention here. They're talking about brackets within a mathematical expression or equations, but you got to be careful of the positive and negative signage, right? After the fatal blunder, C seems to have sunk rapidly. On the evening of the next day, as the shadows deepened in the little room, it was clear to all that the end was near. I think that even A was affected at the last as he stood with bowed head, aimlessly offering to bet with the doctor on C's labored breathing. A, whispered C, I think I'm going fast. How fast do you think you'll go, old man? Murmured A. I don't know, said C, but I'm going at any rate. The end came soon after that. C rallied for a moment and asked for a certain piece of work that he had left downstairs. A put it in his arms and he expired. As his soul sped heavenward, A watched its flight with melancholy admiration. B burst into a passionate flood of tears and sobbed. Put away his little cistern and the rowing clothes he used to wear. I feel as if I could hardly ever dig again. The funeral was plain and unostentatious. It differed in nothing from the ordinary, except that out of deference to sporting men and mathematicians, A engaged two hearses. Both vehicles started at the same time. B driving the one which bore the sable parallelepiped containing the last remains of his ill-fated friend. A on the box of the empty hearse generously consented to a handicap of 100 yards, but arrived first at the cemetery by driving 4 times as fast as B. Find the distance to the cemetery. As the sarcophagus was lowered, the grave was surrounded by the broken figures of the first book of Euclid. It was noticed that after the death of C, A became a changed man. He lost interest in racing with B and dug up languidly. He finally gave up his work and settled down to live on the interest of his bets. B never recovered from the shock of C's death. His grief preyed upon his intellect and it became deranged. He grew moody and spoke only in monosyllables. His disease became rapidly aggravated, and he presently spoke only in words whose spelling was regular and which presented no difficulty to the beginner. Realizing his precarious condition, he voluntarily submitted to be incarcerated in an asylum, where he abjured mathematics and devoted himself to writing the history of the Swiss family Robinson in words of one syllable. Now I knew that I could tell that we were getting to the end here. I'm just going to cough. Sorry about that. But I almost stopped, but I could see that we were nearing the end. So B became moody and spoke only in monosyllables. He spoke only in words whose spelling was regular and which presented no difficulty to the beginner. So many times in mathematical word problems, they it seems deliberately make them more complicated than they need to be. And so I think that's the part that he's satirizing here. He's being humorous about the fact that sometimes the words they use and the problems they devise to make them so complicated, you will never run into them in real life. I know that some of the books are much better now, but even now, sometimes you run into some issues, or I do see some problems that a teacher has made up themselves, and it's not just mathematics. Sometimes it's in other areas like philosophy or other multiple choice type questions, and you think this has just been made deliberately uh, to make it much more complicated than anything you will ever actually see, and so that's what he's satirizing here. And then he's a precarious condition. He submits to being incarcerated in an asylum. He's gone mad because he's actually speaking in ways that people can understand him. All right, I think that is very funny. I'm just going to stop the share for a second and come back to the big screen. Yeah, I think that was hilarious. I didn't want to stop too many times. I made a number of comments, probably more than I usually do throughout a story. But I think if I went through it several more times, I would pick out even more little pieces that I missed on a first reading. So you let me know what else you picked out of that is quite humorous or actually a little bit true. There's kernel of truth, and then he twists it and makes it quite funny. Did you struggle with mathematics? Did you struggle with word problems? Like I say, word problems. I have students who are excellent at math until it comes to the word problems. And then all of a sudden, even though they're doing exactly the same, it might be geometry or algebra. But once they hit the word problems, it's an issue. And that can sometimes be a math issue, but it's more often than not a language issue or comprehension issue. So we have to work on those, and we do that. So if you're interested in that free information meeting for mathematics for younger students or English writing, etc., for everyone, pretty much. I've had students as young as 4 years old, and one man was very proud of being 70 years old, so I don't usually ask the adults their age, but I know that I've had at least 170, and I know of many others that are up in the 40s, 50s, 60s. So lots and lots of different students. Just let me know. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I hope you enjoyed this story. Have a wonderful day. I am just looking for my stop recording. And it's Ron from L.T.L Tutoring Central. Until next time, bye-bye for now.